Well, welcome everybody. Well, welcome everyone to the long live the server closet. Server closet is dead, right? I read it backwards, but so we have Ann Cloyd, Alex Zinn, Phil Goodwin, and Joe Morgan. So you guys got 55 minutes. Take it away.
All right, thank you, and it's good to see you guys here. Now, I don't want to say that we're the only thing between you and adult beverage this evening, but we're getting late in the show, and so we're probably pretty close to that level. But I think we have a really interesting topic here, and they had actually asked me to prepare some slides for this, which didn't actually get loaded. So I'm going to paint you a picture, if you will, to kind of help set the stage. And actually, some of the stuff is from the keynote yesterday, so if you remember that, then this will be a bit of a refresher. And the first thing is that according to our IDC research, about 90% of organizations use the cloud for some part of their data protection. Now, in some cases, that's a little bit of their estate. In other cases, their entire estate. But one way or another, they use it. Moreover, about 60% of organizations are multi-cloud, meaning they use more than one public cloud provider, maybe Amazon, maybe Azure, Google, Tencent, depends on where you are in the world, which ones you use. Of course, the top three here in the US are most dominant around here. But that is largely driven by the application deployments that people have. And we forecast that between 2020 and 2025, as many applications are going to be deployed as have been deployed in the previous 40 years. And kind of the analogy I make for that is really the iPhone or your smartphone. You can see how many, literally millions of applications have been deployed for that. Of course, you're not going to have as many in IT, but there are many, many on the edge. And about 80% of those will be either in the cloud or the edge. And many of those are going to be cloud native, container-based applications. So we are seeing a transformation going on, and what I like to say is that we are the tail of the dog, and the dog is the application, and we get wagged by the application when we're talking about data protection, cyber protection, things like that. So we have to react to that changing environment of application deployments and the way people are moving data through the cloud. So I'm actually joined today by three august experts in this particular area. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and what they do. I'd like to hear from you guys on what you do for your organizations. Tell us a little bit about your organization so that everybody has kind of a perspective. And we'll start with Ann.
Awesome. Thanks for having me today. My name is Ann Cloyd. I'm the co-founder of Deep Tech. We're an MSP in Manhattan. One of the things that I love about our firm is that we are truly dual platform, so we really work with both Mac and Windows because nowadays you don't have to be one platform or the other. And same thing, the way the servers are deployed and the way you protect things is so based on what the client's needs are that there's no straight just one answer. So it's really nice to be able to sit down with the client and really dig through what they're doing and what they're using to figure out what the right approach is. So it's pretty awesome.
And I have to give a special shout out to Ann as well. We had another panel member who had to cancel this morning due to illness. And many thanks to him for not coming here and spreading it. He didn't think it was COVID, but it still wouldn't be cricket for him to have come with not feeling well. So I appreciate that. And Ann came in this morning. They asked her if she would sit in on the panel, and without hesitation, she did. So,
Yep.
so many thanks
Happy to join.
for pitching here.
Lucky to have her here.
Indeed, indeed. Alex.
Yes, Bill, thank you. So Alex is in, and I'm the Chief Cloud Infrastructure Officer for Acronis. I'm responsible for running all the data centers, infrastructure, hardware, actually going all the way up to product operations, incident management. So basically, whatever Acronis develops, we make it run, we make it deliver the services to you. Experience in this industry over 25 years in networking, cloud, building cloud applications, platforms, and cloud is something I'm passionate on. And as you know, Acronis is building our own private cloud. So it will be a very interesting conversation where that fits within the closet picture.
It
So
is.
looking forward to that discussion, yeah.
Great, thanks, Alex. And Joe?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Morgan from Joe's Data Center, and I am an infrastructure data center provider in Kansas City, primarily. And I have been switching my focus over to be more of a cloud focus over the past 4 years. And so that's kind of how I got in touch with Acronis, to be able to start offering solutions in multiple regions that are backed up and secure. And then I'm using Virtuoso as my cloud infrastructure. So.
And I got to say, that's probably the coolest company name I've heard in a long time. When I got introduced to Joe a few days ago in preparation for this, I heard him say Joe's Data Center. Now I'm an old tape guy, so I had to do a quick rewind in my head to make sure I'd heard that correctly. But indeed it is. Now I have a number of questions here that are prepared, but I'd like to keep this as open to the group as possible. So if you have questions that you would like to pose as we go along, please do so. So this is not something where we want to keep it really formal and really scripted. We'd really like to have it much more open. So don't hesitate. We have mics that we can give to you back there, or we can repeat the question, because we certainly do have people on camera who are streaming this from their own homes. So
We're getting online questions as well, or?
I don't have the facility for online
Gotcha.
questions, at least as far as I know. I don't think, nope, I'm getting that signal. But I do kind of want to start with the topic, which is the server closet is dead, long live the server closet. And I'm going to start with Joe, because you confess to having server closets and things like that. So I'd like to know, how appropriate or accurate is that title? Is a server closet dead? Is it alive? Is it on life support? Where do you think we are with that?
Yeah, so I think there's been this narrative that everything is going to go to the hyperscaler and everything's going to the cloud, right? And the date in which that's going to happen just keeps getting pushed farther and farther out. And then what we actually see is there's just more and more demand underneath it all the time that doesn't quite fit the everything in a cloud model. And so I would say that no, the server closet definitely isn't dead, and whether that be the on-premise, actually physically in a closet, we've got our local equipment, or whether that is the workloads that do need to be distributed for whatever reason, that in fact the market is probably even bigger than what they've said, because the market has opened up to where now there's technologies underneath that can support these workloads for small customers that didn't even fit inside of the statistics before. They got overlooked because all of the solutions were built for enterprise. And so suddenly now there's solutions for the smaller MSPs where they can deliver the same type of products. And so we're finding out that no, that server closet, however you want to define it, is alive and well and growing very rapidly.
Can you kind of give us a brief thumbnail of who your clients are, their industry, their profile, things like that, so we kind of get that perspective?
Sure, yeah. My clients are web hosting clients, traditionally. My parents owned a web development company, and I was in middle school, and they said, okay, we'll trust you. You can run our server, which was a big deal to put their business under me, And so my business was growing off of what I saw the challenges that they had and needed, and saying I should replicate and do that for everybody else, And so we were a little bit of an untraditional data center from that aspect, because it was actually custom built for small businesses as opposed to large. And most data centers say, no, you have to have racks and racks of equipment, or we don't even want to talk to you. And so I think that, that kind of coming at it from the actual use case of needing a data center, as opposed to coming at it from what does the market want or need, I think gave me kind of an interesting perspective on that. So.
Interesting. And I want to turn to you. We had chatted a little bit before this session that a lot of your clients are maybe older, you have specialized applications, and cloud isn't always the right thing. So what's your perspective on the server closet in the cloud?
I think the server closet's not going to go away yet. I agree that it's still going to be around for a while, because there are still certain applications that they can't accelerate enough to use over the internet. And clients who are used to local network speeds for some of those services are never going to be happy with internet speeds, especially in some of the bigger cities. Like, I have clients who I can't get them more than a 5 or 10 meg upload. So using large files or databases over cloud-based solutions just doesn't really work. And Most of my clients are also Mac users, and so they don't want to go into a terminal server Windows environment on their Mac. So there's reasons, and some of my clients are also just older, so they aren't comfortable with their data being someplace out in the world that they can't control. That's still an uncomfortable concept to them. So I think for a lot of reasons, it's going to be more split, where there are some things that are definitely better and easier in the cloud, but some services that are going to have to stay local. There's also compliance reasons for some clients. So I think because of those, it's going to be around for a while. It's just going to keep dividing.
Now, what are the key applications that you support through your organization?
In this particular, the older clients, they're running a system off of FileMaker. And so FileMaker, although there is an Amazon environment for hosting it, it's still nowhere near the same as a local network speed. And databases can get very heavy. And so most of my clients, when they try to use them live over an internet connection, are just like, this is almost unusable. It's like, kind of warned you. we keep trying it every couple of years, and it's like you're at a hotel, you're at some place where you don't have control over your bandwidth. It just doesn't work very well. But because they run their business off of it, they don't have a choice. So for some of them, we've done things where we divide it, like give them a local travel read-only copy so they can reference information quickly, but then have their office staff actually make the changes and do the work as ways of working around it. But until we can get better bandwidth everywhere, some of those applications just don't work. And it's amazing in the big cities, sometimes you have neighborhoods that you can't get good internet. It's, it's amazing how much of a struggle it is.
Kind of a backwater there in New York City is what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, there's certain areas where it's too hard to dig up the streets to bring bigger infrastructure.
Yeah, that's true.
For a while we had clients on the west side that I actually had to do microwave off of New Jersey buildings, because there was no line of sight to try to get them something better. So it's really hard to then have those clients rely on things in the cloud when I can't give them a reliable connection to it.
What would you say the mix is between your clients who operate strictly on-premise and those who are hybrid and maybe those who are pure cloud?
More of my Windows-based clients are going more cloud-based because their files and infrastructure needs are smaller. A couple of my largest clients are completely Azure-based, file sharing in the cloud, all of those things. And it's great for them. They travel, they have international offices, et cetera, so it makes it so much easier for them. But they're not using anything that's, slowing them down, and they're much bigger organizations, so they can pay for the bigger bandwidth.
Yep.
So I would say probably 40% of my clients have started to move to being primarily in the cloud. And then you probably got another 30% that are mixed and 30% that are really trying to stay away from it.
Okay, very interesting. Now, Alex, from an Acronis perspective, I'm sure you guys have a view on this. What are you seeing in terms of practical build out? You have your own data centers. Some of your clients like Joe have their own data centers, not to mention Google Cloud Platform as well as Azure that you guys use. What are you seeing as kind of that required mix?
Yeah, but I probably want to start it with actually the headline that we have there.
Sure.
Like one thought that I was having as we were discussing this is that we tend to think about cloud as something that is completely unique and sort of separate from the server closet, but in reality we forget that there is a server closet behind every cloud, and somebody operates it, and that cloud is in reality is more of a economical phenomenon, a service phenomenon, and consumption and elasticity. But there is a man behind it, there is a team that runs it as if, it would be running, if we were running it ourselves in a data center. So it's really a spectrum of consumption models, service models, and the delineation between the service providers and the customer. So from that standpoint, I would look at it as a collection of options that we can offer to, any company can offer, but in particular Acronis can offer to our customers. So we can store your workloads in a public cloud. Whether it's optimized from the economical standpoint or not, this is a separate question, which is why we have actually built our own very specialized backup optimized, DR optimized cloud that brings you a very different TCO model, right? But then thinking about it, kind of going to the edge and to the sort of on-prem with the customers, you can easily think about expanding both the cloud, but also the MSP, like managed services model, all the way to the server closet as we tend to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And I want to go back to you because you mentioned that you have clients that are mostly cloud, mostly on-prem, and then of course a mix. That creates some complexity from a management perspective. as far as how do you enable those customers in those different models. So how are you dealing with that kind of complexity for your client base?
For our part.
Actually,
Go
I'd
ahead,
gone
Toby.
back
Yes,
to Ann for that.
Oh, that was it?
That was
Okay.
Ann.
No worries, no worries. A lot of documentation. My business partner.
And they read it.
My team does, yes, because
Gotcha.
if they're jumping into a client that they're not familiar with, the last thing we want to do is ask the client, so what is your setup? So they're very trained at going in and looking or checking in with one of us that's been around longer to say, can you give me the Cliff Notes version and just get me up to speed? So we've written a lot of custom code to be able to keep track of details in a different way than some of the standard ones do, just because our clients are so diverse. And their range in size and types and platforms, so trying to keep track of all of it, we have to, because it's not just on the server side, it's email side, it's programs, everybody's very different. But it's also one of the things that's made us kind of a specialty in the city is that we're capable of doing that. So it's a lot of documentation.
And keeping it current, I'm sure, is
Yes,
the challenge.
it is
Yeah.
fun to do.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
No, I was actually to follow on your thought. I think it's the area of the system integration that is evolving very rapidly, right? As we go to hybrid cloud and then combination of hybrid cloud and on-prem, you have all the aspects of complexity. How do you manage networking? How do you manage security end-to-end, right? What do you do backup and so on? So this is an area of innovation and the opportunity for our partners. So, and on Acronis side, we make it basically as simple as possible. So for our partners and customers, backing up the workloads onto Acronis Cloud, for example, or into public cloud or on-prem is basically the same in terms of the user experience, right? And we make it very simple. So Joe would be one example, right? How we enable our partners to build their own cloud and bring the customers there, but at the same time offer an option of backing it up into Acronis Cloud.
Okay. And in that regard, Joe, Alex was saying that one of the things that Acronis tries to do is, enable partners, and it sounded like to me like he was talking to you in terms of that kind of functionality. So what do you find in terms of your management of the customer experience in all of those different elements and the different client base that you have?
Sure. Yeah. Well, what resonated with me is what Ann said, because she's in the trenches and she's doing this, and what she talked about was each client being unique, and that there's a different solution for each one of her clients. And so I think sometimes we kind of lose track of the fact that at the end of the day, it is a solution that is being provided to that end customer. And what Alex said is true, is that what has to happen is we have to blend those lines. So we have to have a piece of software that you can treat every type of situation, as whether it be on-premise, whether it be at a data center, whether it be at a hyperscaler, whatever. We need some type of way to manage all of those things seamlessly. And so that's kind of where the future is at. These workloads can no longer be harder to use in one of those scenarios than the other, right? We've seen the advantages of putting things in the cloud when it comes to scalability. We've seen the advantages when it comes to being able to only run a project for a short amount of time and not have to go out and buy huge amounts of infrastructure. And so, but we need that flexibility that the cloud offers, but we need to be able to do it locally on premise as well. And so I think that the thing that's really exciting is that right now those lines are getting merged, and we are finding that there are platforms out there that allow us to do just that and have seamless workloads that can transition between all of those things, or we can have projects that can get built in any number one of these things, and we can still protect it, we can still back it up, we can still do off-site disaster recovery and all of these things. And so the world is changing, but it definitely is not changing in a direction that the server closet is going away. It's just becoming another part of the larger cloud system.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a similar question to what I asked Ann, which is, within your customer base, how would you be able to categorize the percent maybe that are cloud only, hybrid cloud, and on premises only?
Yeah, I think that the majority of my clients, we actually did a survey last year and we asked this exact question, and everybody's using the cloud in some form. The problem is that everybody started out, and I mean that as in like 90% of them either have a workload that they say is already in the cloud, or they say they're going to be in the next year or something like that, very near future. And so it's here, but everybody started out with a lift and shift. So we took everything that we had locally and we said, let's just throw it in the cloud and it's just going to work great. And that didn't work great, right? Because the economics didn't work, the performance and latency didn't work. There was all these problems, and then we realized it was very difficult to pull those back out because now we don't have the physical infrastructure anymore. Now all of a sudden we're having to make these big purchases. And so it's kind of this slow transition where we're finding that really what's needed is an equilibrium where there is let's put everything in the appropriate place. And if it's going into the hyperscaler cloud, it needs to be built to work in that exact environment so that you're not just suddenly in the situation where you have data you can't get back out, or you don't know where that data's at and your compliance guys are throwing a fit and stuff like that. So.
Yep. And Alex, one of the things that Joe mentioned, which I thought was pretty interesting, is the cloud economics.
Right.
And at IDC, one of the things that we've seen is some workloads are being repatriated because people oftentimes move their applications to the cloud for economic reasons, but once they get out there, they realize it wasn't nearly as economical as they thought that it was. It presented additional management problems for them, and they said, "Now we're bringing it back in house." What's your perspective on some of those economics?
Yes, Phil. I think we have a number of examples from the industry. I think the biggest one that everybody heard of is Dropbox, that started in AWS, and then simply because of all the fees that they were getting, right, they had to move out of that, saving over $70 million over 3 years, from what I remember, and actually increasing their gross margin substantially. That helped their valuation on the street. And just recently, Andreessen Horowitz actually published an article about the cloud economics and basically making an argument that it's really good for smaller companies, especially tech companies and startups, to start in cloud when you need your costs to follow revenue. But as you're growing the business, the economics, the economies of scale are not following. So essentially, you're not benefiting from the economies of scales that you would if you were on the hosted, let's say, private cloud or in the data center environment. It's interesting that if you look at the TCO from the Acronis standpoint, one of the reasons why we started building the Acronis Cloud, right, is really analyzing the cost of ownership as you're backing up more and more data, and then you have to recover. If you look at the cost associated of running this in the public cloud, is basically at some point it becomes so significant that it starts becoming a risk or kind of like a barrier for adoption. So for Acronis, the price structure, the infrastructure itself, the architecture, the relationship that we have with our supply chain, how we build the infrastructure, right, are all optimized to bring the right price point and cost points to our partners and the customers.
Mm-hmm. And you seem to have a very close relationship with a lot of your clients. Very, I would characterize it as high touch, is what it sounds like.
Yes.
How sensitive do you find your clients to being in that economic realm? Are they very sensitive to it, or they say, nope, we're happy to pay what we need to get what we want?
I have both extremes. I have a number of small businesses where it's a struggle to figure out what is the more economical way for them. The more medium-sized ones, the flexibility of being able to have the users have access to data more easily outside of the office, they're happy to pay the extra cost because it's letting them expand and grow. And then it does sometimes on the bigger clients start to go back in-house because it just becomes too much. Mm-hmm. So it does change. And because my clients are very much different scales, I see a little bit of each of it. And yes, very high touch with my clients. It's my favorite part.
And that's one of the cool things about the cloud is there is so much room for differentiation, for innovation, and to cater to a specific audience, and that's what we find.
Once again, it's also simple things like, once again, the older clients, they don't get the fact that when you move all your file share to the cloud, you can't sync it all down to your little SSD in your laptop anymore. Like some of those concepts just, they don't quite get it, so moving them to the cloud is a struggle because they don't understand the technology behind it. To understand that it's going to be different. It's going to give you benefits on this side, but it's also going to have problems on this side. And getting them to understand how those things work can sometimes be a challenge. Whether it's cost or not doesn't matter, it's just change.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, and there's the flip side of that. And then there's the people who have only ever seen stuff that was built in the cloud now too. You know, the people that are coming out of school today, they go, oh, well, it's serverless, right? Everybody's talking about these serverless technology. Well, there's still a server somewhere, to your point,
Yep.
you know, but I mean, it's a different perspective too. So you've got both sides of that coin right now going on in the industry.
Yeah, I find, Alex, you had something you wanted to add to that?
Yes, definitely.
I was going to mention that when I talk to clients, a lot of times I get questions about, well, what are the differences between SMBs and enterprise scale? I mean, what are the differences? And we do surveys all the time on these kinds of customers. And what I found is the requirements are remarkably similar, you know, in terms of SLAs, RPO, RTO. Data growth is remarkably similar. The difference, of course, is scale, but the requirements are really the same. So what we find is, or what I found is, that a lot of times that difference between, you know, are they really cloud-oriented or not, is the age of the business, not the size of the business. If they grew up in the cloud era, they're probably all cloud. But if they've been around for some period of time, then they're probably, you know, have some traditional IT or other things that are
Some baggage behind,
some
yes.
exactly some baggage behind that. And so I want to kind of get back to a discussion or a point that we had earlier, which is managing the customer experience in the core, the cloud, and the edge. And what, you know, Ann, you talked about having some of your own IP. Joe, I'd be interested in how you're able to use Acronis products as well as your own IP, and how you manage that customer experience across all those different platforms.
Sure. Yeah. You know, this has actually kind of been a passion of mine for a while. I do these cybersecurity conferences, and one of the questions I ask at each one of these conferences, okay, we're talking about all of these security things, and I know this isn't a security panel, but and I say, how does that apply to the SMBs? How can I use that in-house and even for my own business? And they basically said, well, you're too small, and those customers are too small. They're not even worth our time. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, man, I've got this whole conference full of these cybersecurity experts, and I'm saying there's these people out here who have the same needs as everybody else, and yet there's no solution that has been built for them. And I think what's really cool, I'm going to plug Acronis here now, is that what Acronis has done is they've built a piece of software that allows me to leverage my infrastructure in the data center business, the part that I'm good at, right? And they've let me take my MSP client that's sitting there that just says, I want to maintain my customer, and they've suddenly said, okay, well now we can manage that whole workflow from the setup to where that stuff goes in at Joe's data center, or maybe it's on premise. We can now protect it, so we've got the cybersecurity on top of it. And then we've got the disaster recovery, which is good, right? Because now we're bringing stuff back and running it in our cloud again. And then we've got this partnership with Virtuoso as well, which allows us to do our public and private cloud. So all of this kind of blends together. So we just give one kind of turnkey solution then to those MSPs to be able to just sit and focus on delivering that product to their client. So and then we can white label and rebrand it, which is stuff that Acronis and Virtuoso both built into the platform, so that our MSPs now are delivering a single solution to their client, but they're knowing they're getting all of those enterprise features that before they were just told, you know, sorry, you're not big enough, you can't do this, you know, so it's really cool.
Right. Alex, I was having a kind of an interesting conversation with Sergey earlier today, and he was talking about the challenge of providing that customer experience on a worldwide basis. Because never mind language, I think you guys operate in 190 different countries or whatever. So never mind, you know, the challenge of having a console that caters to Japanese clients versus those in Australia or Europe or wherever else. What are the kinds of ways that Acronis approaches that without having to micro-customize everything for every customer? But what do you do?
Yeah, I think if you look at it, like how do you achieve good user experience across the world, right, globally for Acronis, for our customers? We got to think about the expectations. The moment you say cloud service, right, the customers expect that, okay, there is a certain level of service availability. If my, let's say, PG&E decides to cut off power in my office, right, my Acronis cloud still works. I can still recover. I can make my do my work. But also there is a question of how do I get the right performance in terms of the responsiveness of the system, the performance of the backup uploads and restore. And here it's more complicated than just putting a data center here and there, right? You have to really focus on latency from each of the user, right, towards the closest Acronis location so you can get the best performance there. So what we're doing now is we're actually evolving our infrastructure strategy to now not only go globally to cover more countries, but actually go deeper into each of the markets to, first of all, be present in more of the metros where there is a population that is using our products, so we can bring them closer to the edge of our cloud, but also so putting the edge facility so that we can terminate those sessions and kind of speed it up even further. So for Acronis, it's a interesting global problem that we need to solve, and it's a combination of putting data centers, edge servers, and building the global cloud network that Patrick mentioned on Monday.
Sure.
Yeah.
In addition, I would imagine it's a matter of enabling those partners in those specialized regions to be able to put that kind
Correct.
of, the correct wrapper on that, either by industry or language or
Correct.
custom, whatever it might be.
Yes, yes. So the company is investing in localizing the products according to to the needs of the markets where we're seeing the customer demand, the partner demand. We're also, by virtue of putting the data center there, right, we're enabling the partners to be compliant with the data sovereignty, data locality regulations within those markets as well.
And Joe had mentioned a couple minutes ago disaster recovery, and we haven't really touched on some of those issues and data protection issues. What do you find among your clients, their awareness of data protection and disaster recovery, things like that? Just their awareness to begin with, but then how do you educate them on what they need, and how do you go about delivering that kind of thing?
It's a conversation that we have with each of them, and it's amazing how different the perspectives are. I had one tell me if their building burned down, he's moving to Tahiti, he doesn't care. Okay then. You know, it was like, gotcha, you know. He's like, if this is done, I'm done. I was like, okay, you know, so he was happy just having local backups. And then I have other clients who will pay top dollar to have, you know, full-on disaster, you know, the local device and cloud, so we can spin them up either place in an instant, et cetera. And so it really, once again, it depends on the type of work they're doing, what their compliance and demands are, their size, and I think a lot of it comes down to the owner's understanding of what it really means. If you have a hardware failure, especially right now in the market, it might take me 3 weeks to get you a new server.
Correct.
Because you can't get equipment at the moment.
Right.
So it's a very different conversation right now than it has been, because I can't rely on the fact that I can get a part overnighted anymore. You know, so the conversation is changing again because the times change. So it's kind of like starting to have that conversation again with clients of saying, that worked 2 years ago for you. That's not where we are now. And constantly reevaluating. And also then as they get bigger and they have more staff, you know, getting them to understand, now your 50-person staff is down for the day. Or you can pay a couple grand a month to have uptime. which in the long run is, you know, so it is an ever-changing conversation to have with clients. And it just always surprises me how different they are about it. And all I can do is educate them, and then, you know, it's their decision. And try to give them the best practices and the best ideas. But it still amazes me how different they are.
What do you find some of those best practices are? What do you recommend to your clients as far as best practices?
Once again, seems how we're dual platform. I am not able to recommend one standardized solution. We definitely try to have clients all have at least a local backup, preferably an offsite also. But same thing, we have a lot of clients that travel all the time. So depending on what their solution is, whether they can back their laptops up back to their office, or do I have to have a different solution for the laptops when they're traveling? For a while there wasn't one that could go both ways without opening up particular security holes with certain pieces of software. So it was like, great, this one's better for your on-prem local backup, but on your travel laptops, we're gonna go this way because it gives you the best of both worlds at that point. Once again, makes it more complicated for me to support because now one client has 4 solutions, but it's what's best for the client, you know, and so each one's been very different. And then same thing, once again, back to FileMaker, you can't back up live databases. So I had to figure out how to back up the databases to then back up the backups. or
Yeah.
have FileMaker Server, et cetera. So there's so many different levels to it, including the fact that I still have some clients that are running a Mac OS server, and that's a whole different beast to back up
Right.
to be able to actually restore. So mine have very many levels to it, and figuring out what gives them the best overall. I think right now we support like 14 different backup solutions because
Wow.
I've got everything from Cisco to FileMaker to Apple to Windows to disaster recovery, so it's across the board as far as trying to find the right solutions. And then trying to get them to understand the importance of having a secondary one,
Okay.
hopefully an offsite one, but at least a secondary one.
Right. At least lead a horse to water, right? Very good. Joe, kind of on that theme of disaster recovery, what do you guys recommend and what do you provide for your clients?
Sure, but real quick first, I have
Sure.
to say I have a quote from a customer, and it's, "There ain't gonna be no fire." So this is full on denial, right? At this point, it's just, you want to talk about a solution? No, I can't, because there's never gonna be a
There's not
problem.
going to be one,
Right.
yeah.
I thought you were going to talk about the one where I'll run into the fire.
I'll run into the fire and I'll grab my discs and I'll pull them out because I can't have offsite, right? No, that's the direct quote as well. No, so we right now our disaster recovery solution is essentially that we're leveraging Acronis' technology so that those backups are already sitting as a virtual machine that's ready to spin up in our cloud. And so we are leveraging Acronis to be able to use our infrastructure through Virtuoso, which powers using OpenStack, our public and private cloud offering. And so then what we've done is we've kind of the same road that Acronis is going down is that we're starting to expand our network and build our network so that we can get that as close to home or those geographic locations that are necessary for our clients. And so our Kansas City customers can now back up to our infrastructure in San Francisco, or they could back up to our infrastructure in New York. That could be immediately converted over into a virtual machine that's running in our cloud, powered by Virtuoso. And so we create a tunnel back to their local office. So as far as they're concerned, that server never caught on fire. It never died, right? They're just still running. And then we can then reverse that once we get it fixed on site. So let's say it does take a week to get that SSD overnighted that turns out is out of stock, even though they told you that it was in stock. When it does show up and you do get their server fixed, then we just convert that right back onto their on-premise location. But it is challenging. We in order to even do this, we're having to buy private connections all across the United States. Right now, we've got 12 different locations that we've had to get direct connections to be able to join these peers and be as local as possible. And then now, even going overseas, we've got stuff going to Frankfurt, Germany. So the challenges that Acronis are going through, their local partners are going through it as well. And the solution is not an easy one, right? But no, we're leveraging it all and we're building it all and doing it on a per customer. What solution fits them best, which is a common trend, it sounds like, here as well. So
Yeah, definitely. And Alex, I want to ask you, because I talked to Patrick earlier, and I had said, honestly, how much are you really seeing in multi-cloud? How much are people really moving from one hyperscaler to another? And actually, the answer was pretty surprising. He said you guys are seeing a significant growth in that.
Yeah, majority of the customers who are in cloud, right? They're multi-cloud.
Right, and what he said was one of the key use cases there is, especially in Europe, the concern that if they're in a public cloud provider and suddenly get crosswise with terms of service for that particular cloud provider, the cloud provider can turn them off like that.
Correct.
And they have to have a way to get back. So what is Acronis doing to be able to give people the comfort that their applications are going to be able to stay up and running, whether it's a disaster recovery failover or some business-related failover? How are you guys architecting your data centers to do that?
So the conversation normally starts first with a backup, right? Obviously, we're backing up the workloads that are running natively in cloud, for example, right, in addition to the on-prem. And then as the criticality or mission-critical nature of those applications increases, then inevitably the conversation starts like, so when the disaster happens, when I get cut off from this, how do I bring it up within a certain amount of time that is reasonable for the business? How long am I willing to have this service down? So then the question is, where do I recover? Do I recover in a alternative public cloud, for example, right? Or do I recover in Acronis? And that's exactly what we're doing. So we as part of our Acronis cloud infrastructure, we provide the disaster recovery facilities for both advanced DR and the enterprise DR. So essentially, the recovery process happens in our compute clusters, and the primary traffic that normally would go to the primary side now is going to the Acronis site. And then, as Joe explained, right, there is the rollover, kind of the rollback process there. So we're offering the customers the choices, essentially, what we call the C2C, cloud to cloud backup and DR, where you can take those workloads, right, and you can essentially put it in the Acronis cloud or in alternative public cloud as well.
Okay. I want to maybe shift gears a little bit now towards data silos, because in my research, data silos has become a huge issue. And what we found is that kind of the sweet spot, or whatever you want to call it, for data silos is about between 14 and 20 per organization. And if you kind of charted it out on a standard deviation curve, the middle of that curve is the 14 to 20 range. And what we find is data is siloed either because of geographic location, because of data owner, because of application type, because of other reasons. You know, SaaS applications are separate and things like that. And that creates a real problem in terms of managing the data in those different silos. So Ann, I want to ask you, for your clients, is that a problem? And if it is, how do you manage that? How do you deal with that kind of the siloing of data across solutions? Because you mentioned your customers often do have different implementations for data protection and so forth.
We kind of have done it all along because we haven't been able to have just the Windows Active Directory environments where a lot of people are starting to divide from there. We've always been kind of more divided. So it's been an area that we're a little more used to. And so same thing, we look at which solutions, like we use Acronis for a lot of stuff because we can do the local server and the Google or the Office 365 or other product areas. So we do try to pick solutions that let us hit as many of those areas in one that we can, so that we're not having to troubleshoot more places if we can get away with it. But unfortunately, sometimes there are, because I have Mac and Office 365, I'm doing two different things, I can't make that all into one. So it's just something that for us, we've been used to it. We keep trying to silo it as much as we can in back end, but it's never been an option for me.
Yep, okay. How about you, Joe? What are you seeing in terms of that kind of management, the silo issues that you're dealing with?
Yeah, well, I'm actually really glad that the consumers are starting to speak up and say we can't have this anymore. And because what it's doing is it's forcing all of the platforms to say that we can't just rely on our customers to be sticky because they can't do anything about the fact that once we have their data, they're stuck, right? And so suddenly platforms are saying, okay, well now you can export, or now we make it compatible with another product. And so suddenly the data silo issue is unfortunately slowly being forced upon the software companies out of necessity. And so that issue is solving itself slowly, but until that happens, you know, I'm kind of with Ann in that you deal with Mac, but I deal with Linux, which is a very similar issue, right? Because a lot of the consumer-grade products aren't made specifically for all of these different platforms, and we run into those same issues where, oh, well, I've got this custom solution that runs on a specialized version of this Linux operating system, and so your software isn't going to be able to take care of backing that up. And so you have to be able to start having, you know, a single solution that can suddenly back up any type of workload and data anywhere, and that data has to be able to be just as easy to be moved somewhere else as it is to get that data in. And there is no easy solution for it. I mean, we had a whole conversation about how we're building physical networks all across the world just to be able to deal with these issues because, you know, there is only 10 megabits of internet available in some places. As much as everyone wants to talk about the future is already here and everything is wireless and everything is on the edge. And, you know, no, well, that doesn't cover every single workload that's everywhere out there, and it's just unrealistic, you know. So unfortunately, we're kind of at the mercy of all of these different vendors that make all of these different software getting all on the same page, and it's going to be slow and painful, and that's why we need the MSPs of the world to continue to push that, and you know, we'll push that because it's good for us as well, because that means this stuff is mobile enough to be able to leverage where it really should be, whether it be the data center locally like we provide, or whether it be on premise, or whether it be in a Acronis cloud somewhere or a hyperscaler cloud somewhere else or whatever.
Yeah. I want to take a wider perspective
Sure.
on that and kind of talk about the cloud-specific siloing. I think what we're seeing right now is the situation where once the customer puts their workloads and data in a particular public cloud environment, right, it's extremely hard and economically discouraged to move those workloads into on-prem onto others. I think it's a historical artifact, and it creates an opportunity for a data-optimized cloud environment such as Acronis. And obviously, I want to hype up the cloud that I'm building, but realistically, this is really the economical opportunity for us to create an environment where our customers can put data in and out without being told and taxed over the board as you would, if you went to the public cloud. There is a bigger issue as well as to how do you create a seamless multi-cloud environment, right, including networking and security that works end-to-end across multiple cloud infrastructures and can be managed seamlessly in a sort of very user-friendly way, connecting different workloads, different databases, right, and the cloud storage environments as well. So that's the area where we're looking into as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to leave about 5 for questions if we happen to have them. And so maybe we can take the next few minutes before that, and I'm going to turn to you, Joe, and I'm going to have you pull out your crystal ball. Exactly. And if you could look out 5 years, 10 years from now, what do you think the server closet is going to look like in that period of time?
I think that the physical infrastructure will look very similar than it does today. I think the magic that is going to happen is on the software that sits on top of it to provide that streamless solution. And what we're going to have is we're going to have an end solution that can just automatically to the end customer kind of move wherever it needs to be and work seamlessly wherever it needs to be. So if you're the person who's actually designing the solution or the software application on it, you're going to have kind of a centralized platform that will work regardless of where you decide to set it at. But when it comes to the data center itself, do I believe that infrastructure is just going to continue to grow with all these smaller companies? I think it's kind of undetermined. Right? I mean, there's so many mergers and so many things happening in the back end, and the competition is much greater than it used to be. I used to try to buy the equipment, and then the customers would just be there for it, and now it's becoming more competitive all of the time. And so the market is, I think it's going to be a question of who is able to provide the best end solution for the customer and leverage those other technology pieces that are out there best, and those are going to be the ones that make it. But I'm still hoping the data center will be around, obviously. So.
Yeah, that's right. And what's your perspective on that as far as your crystal ball and what you think that server closet's going to look like?
I think Alex had a really good point. I think a lot of times we think of the server closet just being in our local client space. You're right, server closets aren't going away. They're just going to become bigger and more distant from the end user, but it's not going to go away. And I don't see in the next 5 years all of the different applications being able to be accelerated enough to get rid of some local servers. So I think it's going to keep pushing that way. I would say for my clients, it's probably going to get to the point of 75% being in the cloud or someone else's data center, and 25% being more local because things are continuing to grow that way. But I liked your analogy of, server closets aren't going away, they're just getting bigger.
Alex, what are your thoughts? What's your crystal ball tell us?
I think, very interesting question. So I think there's two perspectives or two trends that I kind of imagine there. First, from the operational standpoint, the server closet, as Joe said, from the hardware perspective, it may remain the same, but then operationally, who manages this closet? What kind of applications are running there that can become an extension of a cloud, or at least the managed service provider services, kind of being a logical extension of the data center environment as well. From the adoption standpoint, kind of taking it to the next level, I like to think about this as the edge cloud that requires a new application paradigm to really catch on. Like right now, there is no universal or kind of generally accepted paradigm that says I can leverage, for example, an edge server close to the user and at the same time have a sort of communication protocol, so distributed databases, right, with a backend. So once that paradigm catches on and there is a certain level of standardization, then we can see more and more adoption of the general applications utilizing the edge servers, and basically the server closet being one of them.
Yep. I'm going to put you guys on the spot for one last question, and I'll let whoever wants to go first. What technology do you see today that we rely on that you believe is going to be irrelevant 5 years from now?
Good question. I was going to say 2G, but
It's a little too easy.
but even
I'll let
even
you get off
that,
that easy.
even that, you look at Southeast Asia and some of those areas.
That's true in some
Really,
of those places.
it's really most economical option to cover.
Sure.
But we're not talking about that, right?
They're right. I'm not going to let you off that
Yeah.
easy, Alex.
I don't know if this fits or not, but I think the issues that have been described here today with operating systems, I think that's going to go away. I don't think it's going to matter whether you're using Android or iPhone or whether you're using a Mac or you're using a Linux-based computer or Windows. The applications are being redesigned to work on all of those different workloads. So this idea that you have this specific program that will only work in this specific place, I think that's going to be the biggest change that we're going to be able to see. And some of that happened just naturally from things becoming web-based, right? So as long as it has an internet browser and ran on that, you were good to go. You can now do it on your phone just as easily as your computer. And I think that is going to change the market in a big way, because suddenly you've got all of these devices that you can do anything you wanted to do on. And you're not buying a device based on the application that you want to run on it. You're buying the device that looks cool or fits in your pocket, or you can take on vacation or whatever. So.
Yep, for sure. Ann?
My first thought was that we're going to go more tablet and get away from laptops and desktops. But then I remember there's so many times when I take my iPad out and I'm like, oh yeah, that website doesn't work on it. I have to take the laptop out to use it. So I don't think it's going to go that quickly, because we've got to wait for those other technologies to catch up and the other website developers and stuff to actually make those things compatible. So I was like, yeah, nope, I don't think those are actually going to go away, because there's so many times where I pull it out and I'm like, oh, I got to go get the laptop out because it just doesn't work. So it's hard to say, because there's so many areas that so many other parts have to catch up on before any of those kind of changes can really happen. And although it's moving there, it's not there yet.
Yep, for sure. I guess I'll pull mine out and go out on a limb, a little bit similar to Joe here, in that I think what's going to go away is infrastructure device management, where artificial intelligence will be able to manage the infrastructure, utilize resources, balance workloads, abstract workloads from the infrastructure even further than they are today. So I think that future is AI. But we have 3 minutes and 36 seconds left. So if there are any questions anybody would like to pose to our panelists, please feel free. Yes, sir.
I have a question for Alex.
Could we get a microphone here, please?
Sure.
Hi. Excuse me. You're in a unique position when it comes to dealing with multi-cloud, both working with customers who are deploying things in these clouds through you, and you're also having to interact with those pretty heavily. So I was just curious what maybe unknown challenges that brought about. You have to have people trained in all these different clouds. There are things that you can probably do in one that you can't do in another. Speaking of the hyperscalers. So
That's right.
that's and that's something we're all going to be moving more towards in our.
Thank you for the question. And I have actually my colleague John here who will add, I think, some context here. But one of the challenges that you see as you're building services, and I count Acronis services as one of those on top of different cloud environments, is being able to standardize or being able to put a standard architecture that maps well onto the infrastructure primitives, such as network constructs, right, or compute constructs, load balancing, and so on. Kind of being able to map that well to expect the same level of performance, right, and scalability as you're building those, right? So from that standpoint, it's almost unpredictable, basically, right, until you start digging into this and actually get some experience. There is intricacies in each of the public cloud implementations wherever you go, right? Be that Azure, AWS, GCP, and so on. Each one of them will have different versions that kind of look the same, but in reality they're very, very different and have different aspects of how you want to provision them, monitor, scale. So that's probably like the most practical and the serious issue as you put your applications across multiple cloud environments, right? Because we tend to think about, oh my God, cloud, like just very simple, right? Just put it on. Well, not exactly, right? So you still need to have a lot of expertise, which, by the way, goes to the question of cloud economics. We tend to think about it that like the moment we put applications on cloud, we kind of can cut the IT personnel. Well, you can probably cut the IT personnel that puts the hardware in the rack, but then now you have to invest in the other type, right? That kind of understands how the cloud works. So it's really not that simple of an equation, yeah. But thanks for the question, yeah.
Well, and the traditional data center is very inefficient, right? Because the traditional data center isn't one uniform thing that gets sold as just one layer. It's a bunch of these individual servers doing these individual workloads, and with every single one of those, you've got 10% of the CPU being used in a system. You've got all this free disk storage space. You've got extra RAM and all this stuff, and so you've got this huge warehouse full of all of these computers that each one individually is only getting used 10 to 15%, right? And so as we start to redesign that data center, even though I think one of the economies that gets missed is how more efficiently the data center will run when you aren't having to worry about that individual server for the end product. Now you're looking at it as a whole, and you're leveraging AI or whatever to be able to best know where it needs to be expanded, better utilize all of that hardware and those investments, and so that economy works even at the infrastructure level in savings as well.
Good point, yeah.
Very good. Well, we are out of time. Ann, Alex, Joe, many thanks to you guys. I know we hit a lot of questions you guys did not expect. So
We did not.
I didn't stump a single one of you.
We moved kind of far away from the server closet, but I think it was
We
good
did.
discussion. So
Yeah.
it was definitely
Yeah,
warranted.
excellent.
Yeah.
And thanks to all of you who came and participated in this, and we'll look forward to talking to you guys later.
Cheers. Thank you.